Netherlands dairy cooperative. There's 12,000 member farms. In the cooperative, we process around more than 80% of the milk in the Netherlands. And we're selling that all over the world. The farms in the Netherlands, they are quite big. We have on average 96 cows per farm, producing more than 8,000 liters of milk per cow. So it's a lot of milk. We have business in Asia, Africa, America. So we have around 27 factories in the Netherlands. And also we have factories in other countries, and we're next to the milk we're sourcing from our member farms. We're also sourcing in some other countries like Pakistan or Nigeria. But most of our milk, it's really Dutch milk. When I was hearing about you were looking for someone to give a presentation or to talk to you about sustainability, was quite immediately interested, because I have also half Turkish children. So, you know, I know the country very well, and I speak a bit of Turkish, but to read really about sustainability, I have a difficulty pronouncing the Turkish word for sustainability. So it's too difficult, and a lot of the information, of course, is in your own language. I'm very happy also to hear from you how you're working on sustainability, and to share, you know, our approaches. Our company has started in 2008 as a merger of a lot of companies. So a lot of cooperatives were merged, and that's also when our sustainability targets and our sustainability journey for Friesland Campina started. In the Netherlands, it's a country with a big river and a big harbor. We have a lot of water. We're living in a delta. So it's very different maybe from the Turkish situation. We get quite a bit of rain, but we have 2 very dry months. It's July and August. In the summer, we get too little water. And we have a big harbor. So we have a lot of food coming into the country, and also feed. That's why we have so many cows, so many pigs, so many chicken. It's really, we have more pigs, chicken, and cows than humans in our country. In that sense, we have a lot of manure. So we have been faced with environmental issues and challenges actually already since 1980. That was not maybe specifically on water, but on water pollution, phosphorus, nitrogen, high concentrations in the water, high ammonia emissions causing acid rain. We also have a lot of CO2 coming and methane coming from our cows, and it's a very small country, so we have been challenged by the government always to improve on that, to be able to keep our business. And so we started with setting sustainability targets in 2010 for 2020, and we're in the process of setting our targets for 2025 and 2030. We have both targets for our farmers and we have targets for the company. The targets for the farmers, of course, they have to been executed and approved by the cooperative, whereas the targets for the company, they're set by the company and have to be realized by the company. And actually, the cooperative and the company, they're 2 separate entities. So it can be, there's a whole process going back and forth between the company and the cooperative to make the agreements on what the targets are. Since I think 2011, we are reporting our sustainability performance. We have set the targets, we're reporting on that, and we have, I think, 12 KPIs on all kinds of sustainability issues, social, environmental. The one that's related to water is actually for the processing. We have a water efficiency target. to reduce water use per kilogram of produced product by 2% every year. And we're monitoring that for all of our factories. So every factory has to achieve this. And then on average, we will also achieve the 2%. Since 2 years, we had a sustainability report that was separate from the annual report, but since 2018, we have integrated those two. So in our annual report, where all our financial results are, is now also the performance on all of these key performance indicators and also the water. So this is how we report and be transparent about the targets. That's about the factories. On the farms, currently we don't have a water target, but we have been experiencing droughts over the last 2 years, especially in the summer months. And we're really, because of course the climate is also changing, it seems that we're going to get more precipitation in some moments and get very little in other moments. So we have been facing the fact that our farmers, they try to often irrigate in some areas the land, but they are not allowed to if there's really water scarcity, so if the groundwater is depleted. And there's also for every factory a maximum amount of water that can be sourced per year by law. So we're worried for having productivity loss at our farms, because when it's drought, we have not enough grass growing, and then we cannot produce as much milk. So we will have to work on this, and it's very closely related also, of course, to climate change, and we're not going to avoid that. I don't know the perspective for Turkey. I've seen some climate change prognosis, but I don't have it clear. But I can imagine that you're in a more water scarce region than us, so you must also be concerned about having enough water. Then something different, but it also has to do with water. We own around 30% of the agricultural land in the Netherlands. And around 60% of that land is sandy soil, so it's very sensitive to droughts. But we also have 12% of our land, it's peat soil, so it's former marshland, moorland, where we're farming on, and actually you cannot do anything else there than having grassland. You cannot do any arable farming there. And to be able to put your cows onto that land, you have to dewater it. We have the dikes, and we have the cows between them, and we have to take the water between the dikes away so that it stays dry and the cows don't sink into the soil. We can use it, but when you do that, your soil starts to sink. So it also has to do because if you take away the water from those soils, you put oxygen to the soil, and it starts to degrade, and then you have to lower the water levels again, and the dikes will become not higher, but the cows will go lower in years. So that's also very much climate change and water related issue that we have, and that we're trying to find technical solutions for. That's about the summary of what our company is and what the topics are that are emerging for us. And I would like to hear from you what questions you have about our approach, or any questions you have, and to be open. I hope I can answer all of them.
Has anyone question to Sanne? Maybe I can ask. You have you don't have the problem with the, you said that you don't have a problem with the water quantity, but it's a problem in the quality of the water. And when you, just a minute, there's a problem in the screen. Someone starts to share its screen, just a minute. Just a minute, I don't understand who starts sharing screen. Yeah, I finished. You said that there's a problem with the nitrogen or the gray water. There's a problem in the gray water, I think. How do you solve this problem in your farms or your factories?
We have had actually the government interfering with that. So these problems with nitrogen and phosphorus were very heavy in 1980, when the farmers used to apply a lot of artificial fertilizer to the land. They would, for example, apply 500 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare. And actually the government stepped in and they said, you cannot do that. There's a maximum amount of nitrogen that you can apply. There's a maximum amount of phosphorus that you can apply per hectare. This was just the first step. Then after some time, some farmers said, yes, but we are very efficient in doing this, and we should be allowed to apply a little bit more because we have a very good balance between the amount of nitrogen coming into the farm and going out of the farm. So what was the next step was that farmers were asked to keep nitrogen bookkeeping. So like a financial bookkeeping, the amount of money going in and out of the farm was listed. Now the amount of nitrogen and phosphorus coming into the farm and going out of the farm, it was registered. And so we were able to see for every farm in the Netherlands how much nitrogen was left on the land. And farmers were able actually to optimize their production system and not just to say, okay, you cannot do more than this, that's it. Now they can also really try to optimize the efficiency. And then later on, this information that goes into this system, it became more and more data driven. We're very fortunate in the Netherlands that we're very far developed in digital data collection. And we have a lot of information from the farms. It's in databases, and we have created in 2015 a very big database with the whole dairy industry in the Netherlands to collect all the farm data. So the government is delivering information, our company is delivering information, feed companies are delivering information, everyone is delivering the information what comes in and out of the farm. So also the samples from the soil, the samples from the manure that we take, it all comes into a central database. So we're able to calculate a lot of sustainability indicators, farm specifically. And it also allows us to set targets on an individual farm basis and to reward farmers for that.
Also, in your speech, you said that there is a water KPI in the factories. And for the last product, 2%, if I am not wrong.
Yeah.
How do you control this 2%? What do they have to do for reducing this amount to 2%?
Mm-hmm. So first, to explain how the responsibilities in our company are arranged. So we have at the corporate level, we have the 2% water efficiency target. And then every factory has a safety, health and environmental manager who is responsible for reporting water efficiency, but also safety numbers back to corporate, and to take initiatives to reduce the water efficiency in the factory. In the factory, there's a lot of people working there that have to manage the machinery. So there's one thing that you can do is have your operational people be aware of the target and having a close look that, well, actually you close all the water when you don't need it. And to our company is very much working, everybody gets a performance evaluation every year, and these people who work also at the operational level, they will be, they have to make sure that the factory runs efficiently because of financials, but they also have to make sure that they realize their sustainability targets. And when they do well at the end of the year, they will get a bonus. This is the system for everyone to make sure everybody works efficiently. So it's a lot of humans involved. On the other hand, of course, when you're processing dairy, you always have to clean your pipes every now and then. And that's where a lot of water is used. So that's one of the things you really have to see how close can you get to using as little water as possible, keeping the food safety, you know, not having any issues with food security, but not to do any more cleaning than you strictly need. That's something you can do. And then what's also interesting is in our company, we have cheese factories and we have whey processing factories. So the cheese factories, they're delivering the whey. So they get normally as much water into the factory as they're getting out of the factory, unless they are drying the whey before they send it to the powder factories. And the powder factories, they get in more water than goes out because there's just powder going out and wet whey coming in. So sometimes this balance changes, and this can also cause huge problems for us that one factory has enough water, but now all of a sudden, because they're transporting condensed whey, then all of a sudden the factory that dries the powder, they have a shortage of water because they're not getting as much water in that they can recycle. But for the factories that do the powder, of course, yeah, they are able to be water neutral in theory, but it's because, yeah, you're getting in more water, you're drying, so you could reuse that water and you could be net positive in your water usage. But it has been very challenging for us as well to be able to make the investments to make that happen in practice, because water is very cheap in the Netherlands. So there's no financial driver to make that more efficient. And when we make these investments, most of the time, yeah, there has to be a financial driver, and then the driver would be that we are not allowed to source more water. Then we're really having some technical issues, then we will make the investments in practice. That's also the reality of being a company and having to be profitable.
Okay, there are some questions in the chat part. I think the first question comes from Mrs. Dilek Emil. I am leaving the word to her.
Teşekkürler değerli açıklamalar için. Aslında bir bakıma da benim soracağım soruya giriş de oldu. Ben de Hollanda'da su kullanma maliyetini soracaktım. Çünkü Türkiye'de de su kullanma maliyeti halen ucuz. Bu nedenle örneğin enerji verimliliği konusunda birçok çalışma yaparken şirketler veya çiftlikler su kullanma konusunda aynı isteği ve arzuyu göremiyoruz. Suyun olmamasının maliyetinin çok yüksek olmasına karşılık bu durumla nasıl baş edebiliyorsunuz? Su kullanma bir maliyet olarak görülmese de verimlilik konusundaki çalışmaları nasıl teşvik ediyorsunuz?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're experiencing the same challenge, and I do not have a solution for it, because indeed I'm not exactly know the price for water, but I know that I, as a person, paying a lot less for my water use than for my energy use at home. So it's really cheap, and I think the only way to make sure that the water measures are taken is that the government states that if you make a new investment, you can only do the best available techniques, so the most sustainable techniques. We also have it for example, making investments on machinery in factories for energy efficiency. We always have to use the most energy efficient technologies. Another situation is, for example, with the ammonia emissions from the stable. You're only allowed to build certain types of new stables that have lower emissions, and that's actually arranged by the government. Yeah, that's the government always have two tools. One is saying that you cannot do something, so one is subsidizing that you can do something. And well, of course, we prefer the latter, but yeah, you don't always get that. So.
Also, there's a second question from the Serdar Türkmen, which is the member of Pınar company in Turkey, and he is my old friend. We can listen you, dear Serdar.
Merhabalar, sesim geliyor herhalde.
Yes.
Bizler de çok uzun zamandır su kullanımını azaltma çalışmaları yapıyoruz. Sizler gibi yıllık hedeflerimiz var belirli oranlarda, belirli yüzdelerde azaltmak için. Tabii yani biz sonuçta bir süt fabrikası olarak değerlendiriyoruz ama her ürün grubu özelinde aslında bir kullanım miktarı var. Uzun ömürlü süt yapıyorsanız ayrı, peynir yapıyorsanız ayrı, yoğurt veya süt tozu yapıyorsanız ayrı. Biz hemen hemen tüm ürün gruplarıyla çalışıyoruz fabrikalarımızda. Bunlarla ilgili bir ideal bir oran var mıdır? Bir ton UHT süt üretmek için kullanılacak su miktarı ya da bir ton peynir için böyle bir belirlediğiniz oranlar var mıdır? Artı bu su kullanımını her yıl %2 azaltmak gibi hedefler gerçekten çok iddialı. Hani bunlar için inovatif bir şeyler yapıyor olmak lazım. Yeni teknolojiler kullanıyor olmak lazım. Siz de biliyorsunuz SIP sistemlerinde belirli konsantrasyonları, süreleri sağlamak zorundasınız. Hani buralarda bize önerebileceğiniz inovatif yaklaşımlar var mıdır? Bu konuda bilginizi rica edeceğim. Teşekkür ediyorum.
Yeah. I don't know for every product group from my head what is the water efficiency, so the amount of water used per kilogram of product, but of course it will be different for every type of product that you make. That's why it's very useful to set a percentage as a target and not an absolute value, because it will be different in every factory. So I would have to look them up and ask and come back to you after the meeting what kind of numbers we find. We're monitoring them year on year, and yeah, also with regard, like I told you, I am an animal scientist, and unfortunately my process technology water expert couldn't join, but I've promised to bring back all the questions to her about which technologies we apply. But I'm sure we can ask for that. But of course, yeah, like you said, cleaning in place is very very important.
Okay, there's another question from Oğuzhan Katmer. We are waiting your question, dear Oğuzhan.
Herkese merhaba. Aslında benim sorum Serdar Bey'in sorusuyla aynısıydı. Serdar Bey sordu. Cevabını da daha sonra paylaşacağını iletti. Teşekkür ederim. Benim de merak ettiğim konu buydu.
Değerli katılımcılar, herhangi bir başka soru var mıdır? Konuyla ilgili olarak merak ettiğiniz, Friesland Campina'nın süreçle ilgili yaptığı çalışmalar konusunda merak ettiğiniz soruları alabiliriz.
Merhabalar, Burhan Sakkoğlu. Ben her iki ülkeyi görmüş birisi olarak Sanne'yi biraz suya bakış açısını Türkiye'de ve gördüklerini, yadırgadıklarını, daha ideal olarak olabilecek şeyleri kendisi bize aktarabilir mi, tespitlerini? Veya Hollanda ile kıyaslayabilir mi?
That's very nice. Maybe I want to share one photo from Turkey with you. That is a really, can you see it? A very beautiful picture.
Yes.
So this is a water collection lake in eastern Turkey. And this is where the village that was close to the water barrier, it has partly disappeared, and there's only a minaret showing from the water. So that's for that is what the photo that was in my head when I was going to this meeting. I thought, yeah, I have to put it up in case we talk about it. We get to talk about it because this is really part of what I've heard about water in Turkey. Is you have a lot of hydropower and a lot of projects on hydropower. And I'm not very well informed, but I know that there's always also some discussion about hydropower, but it's, you have the people living there, you have the water collection, the farmers that live downstream, how do you divide it? But you also want to make sustainable energy for another sustainability topic, climate change. This is something that I've seen in Turkey.
Bunlar kimin mitelleri? Çamaşır mı? Çamaşır mı bunlar?
Someone. Okay, thanks. So this is something that I've seen. And then what I was really impressed about when I visited different parts of Turkey is the enormous biodiversity in your grasslands. I'm really, really jealous at that because, we have a very efficient country, but there's not a lot of flowers in our grasslands. So that's just something I wanted to mention, that if I look at dairy farming in Turkey, you have such a high biodiversity in your grassland, and you must taste it in the milk. It's just something. You have a lot of space, which I think is also a very big difference between the Netherlands and Turkey. Precipitation is much lower. But on the other hand, you have more space, so your production doesn't have to be as efficient as in the Netherlands. You have more space, so your productivity might be less important. We have very high density with very high efficiency. This also means large-scale farms, high investments, high costs, high income for farmers. Whereas it's in your country the farms are smaller, but you're also less dependent on the market developments, for example, for the feed you buy. So I think that's it's maybe not really related to water, but it's very different situation to start from when you look at the agricultural part. I haven't seen any dairy factories, so I can't say an awful lot about it.
Does anyone have another question to Sanne?
Ya biz Anıl Bey, biliyorsunuz bizim projemiz yemden başlayarak hayvansal üretim, arkasından süt ve süt ürünleri üretimine kadar gidiyor. Su yönetimine ilişkin hayvancılıktan bazı örnekler verebilir mi ülkesindeki? Bizim ülkemizdeki yapılan hayvancılığı da gördü, mera hayvancılığını da gördü, kendilerinin büyük çiftliklerini de gördü. Aile işletmelerini de doğuda mutlaka görmüştür diyorum. Hayvancılığı su yönünden biraz değerlendirilebilir mi, su kullanımı yönünden?
You mean the division of water use throughout the chain, dairy chain? Or
He is asking about the whole supply chain from farm to the factory. I think Burhan asked this question.
and what is the main use of water? So what we have done one water footprinting study a few years ago to get some insight in where we have the highest water usage, and we found that we have the feed sourcing, we have the water use on the farm, and we have the water use in the factory. And we found that the most water is used on the farm. And it's not because cows drink that much water, but it's because of the irrigation. And because we have 2 months a year that there's a lot of water stress. And at that moment, you have, if you do water footprinting methodology, you know it, you get very high stress on the water, so you get very high factors. So, but most of the water we're using is actually on the farm. It's not so much in the feed we source. We were expecting that because, for example, for greenhouse gas emissions, a large part of the emissions occur in the production of the feed, but in our case, actually, most of the feed we are sourcing, it comes from regions where there's a lot of precipitation, like the tropics. Soy, for example, is one of the ingredients in our feed, and it's coming from a region where there's no water stress. So that's what we found. The water usage was much bigger on the farm than in the factories, but there's of course a difference in the type of water that we're using. When we're irrigating, we're using water from surface, whereas often in the factories we have to use it from groundwater or tap water, and that's of course also different issue related to scarcity. Maybe that answers the question, I hope.
Başka sorusu olan katılımcımız var mı acaba?
Ben bir soru daha sorabilir miyim? Su kullanımı konusunda bugüne kadarki en radikal değişiklik, uygulama, inovasyon neydi acaba bize örnek olarak verebileceği? Su kullanımının azaltılmasına yönelik.
So, again, a very process technology driven question. So actually, I wouldn't...
Tüm süreci düşündüğünde hakim olduğu konular açısından soruyorum.
Yeah, I think the most radical, well, actually something that should happen is what we have done is something you haven't done yet. In the Netherlands, when we look at the farms, we are reseeding our grasslands to make them more productive. However, when you do that, you get a root system that doesn't go so very deep. And it gives you very high yields per hectare. But when a drought comes, you can see that the grasslands that have been reseeded, they become yellow. Whereas the grasslands that have remaining pastures, they will remain green. And I think that's maybe very important message also for you, that if you move that way of improving productivity through reseeding your grasslands and making them more efficient, you actually take a risk for being very sensitive to water scarce periods.
Maybe I can ask a question to you, Sena. You said that every farmer should obey the sustainability rules of Friesland company. And if they didn't obey these rules, what is the penalty of this in your country or according to your company?
Yeah. So there's different things actually that are driving farm management. So we have, of course, we have legislations from the government. You have them for food safety, but you have them for sustainability as well. And if you are not living up to them, maybe you are checked by the government at some point in time, and they will conclude that you haven't obeyed the rules. You could get fined, but you can also have your farm shut down. That's what the government can do. If you, how do we work on this as a company? We always try to take a positive approach. So we have implemented a number of sustainability indicators on our farms. And we have a digital system to monitor the performance on those indicators from a distance. Of course, those numbers are also checked by an independent company. They go to farms, they check the numbers. We also do statistical tests to see if farmers are filling in numbers that cannot be realistic. So we also see if a farmer makes a mistake, he also gets a warning in the system, but also he can get a visit to check the numbers. So these are things. So how do we motivate our farmers to perform well on the sustainability indicators? We have implemented a system where we redivide the profit of the company. So the farmers are the owners of the company. So at the end of the year, they get money, the profit, they get it paid out. So part of that profit, we put it in a place and we look at the sustainability indicators, and you can score points for different topics. And if you score a total of 40 points, it's not enough. You lose your money that you put into the bucket. If you're performing very well, you get money out of the bucket. So it's like, yeah, a rewarding system with farmers redividing the profit for that purpose. And we reward, so the total amount of money that goes through that redivision is 25 million euros in total for all the 12,000 farms. So it's not nothing. It's also not that all the farmers are interested. It's to improve. So it's yeah, it's in the middle. It's not that they're going to go broke when they don't score the points, but that's a nice extra.
Is there another question for Sena?
Yes, I have a question. Hello, everyone. This is Marwa from Ankara University. I'm a PhD student. Actually, I have two questions for you, Mr. Anil, and for Mrs. Sanne. I wanted to ask, you said that you have so many branches all over the world. I wanted to know if you apply these policies and this 2% target in all your branches. And, you know, it depends to the country, to the policies of each country, and also the water amount available in each country. My question to you, Mr. Anil, maybe it would be useful if we have kind of comparison between water consumption in Turkey and in European country like Netherlands, or like I know that water in Turkey is more expensive than in Europe. So what are the challenges in Turkey, or like the methods you're doing or the policies you're doing here or you're applying to reduce the water consumption in dairy industry. And thank you.
Now that I hear the second question, I forgot the first one. That's perfect. You asked for the, can you please repeat the first question?
Okay, if you apply those policies in all your branches all over the world? Yeah.
Yes, we do apply the 2% reduction for all factories. Of course, the total performance is the average of performance on different locations. So we also look at where is it realistic, but sometimes it's even easier to do it in a developing country because the factories might be having more older installations, so making a change, it will be more effective. In some of our developing countries, like Nigeria, we also have made a collaboration with water stewardship. It's more of a social approach to working with different stakeholders and looking at the water issue also from a social perspective, like who needs it, how can we work together, and we've done that also in collaboration with a very famous Dutch beer brand Heineken, because they're also very active in Nigeria and working on water stewardship.
I think you finished, Sanne. Thank you very much for your question, Warma. We also make a research according to your question. There is reports in our projects, and you can easily find all the reports in our project website, www.sssstr.org, or capital letters of the Water Sustainable Dairy Turkey, westr.org. There is two reports related to your question. One of them is the Turkish Dairy Sector Current State Analysis Report. We try to measure the water usage in the whole supply chain, from feed production to the production of the dairy products. And our other report is the benchmarking report. You can easily find some country examples, especially the European Union member countries. Also UK after the Brexit, they are not European Union now. And also there's another examples from the New Zealand. If you have further questions, you can directly reach to me. Thank you. Is there any question? Soru sormak isteyen başka katılımcımız var mı? Türkçe olarak direkt sorabilirler. Simultane çeviri çerçevesinde Sanne İngilizce duyuyor zaten soruları. Sorusu olan kimse var mı? Eğer ki soru yoksa yavaş yavaş toparlayacağız o zaman. I think there isn't any new question from the attendees. We will be grateful if you can send the technical questions to the Serdar or the Mr. Oğuzhan. We will be grateful for replying them. Dear Sanne, thank you very much for your attendance and the information that you give us. We are also happy that you are half Turkish. And we wish you good luck in all your work and your sustainable story. Thank you very much for your attendance.
Thank you.
Bye. Değerli katılımcılar, herkese çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Bir sonraki programımızda görüşmek üzere. Herkese iyi günler.